We just need the thing
Okay, we'll just give them a
slideshow on
second.
screen.
The slides on screen. Yes, perfect.
So I will extend this. Give me 1 second.
No pressure, Terry. Aw, it's an owl.
Nice.
Oh, there we go.
I think this will have to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I think that's
Cool.
good. Ready to get started, Terry?
Yep.
Okay, so hello everybody and welcome to Bypass 101. This is an introduction to basic bypass methods, so we'll be going through a whole bunch of different bypass methods and talking about them. I'm Karen and I am a physical security consultant and penetration tester.
And my name is Terry. I'm been a volunteer and lead of the Physical Security Village for the past couple of years.
Awesome. Next slide. Awesome. So let's get started with what is bypass. So a lot of the times when people are thinking about physical hacking, they think of stuff like lockpicking, which is used in these types of pen tests and whatnot, but there are a lot of other methods that allow people to access these restricted spaces that are known as lock bypass collectively. So this is one very good example of lock bypass. If you could just hit there, perfect. Where the idea is a door is locked, but instead of targeting the lock and instead of trying to pick it, you find a way around it. So you can see this mail slot is placed in a very convenient location where you can access the lever from the unsecured side and allow you access into what should be a otherwise restricted space. So like I mentioned before, it thinks about finding alternative ways to get that door open or having to ignore using the door completely. They are usually faster and more reliable than lockpicking, and you see them used far more often in physical hacking applications.
Oh
no.
sorry.
Did you close it?
I don't think so.
There we go. Cool. So here is part of the reason why we talk about physical security and why we bring it to people's attention, because it's something that people aren't thinking about very often. And when people aren't thinking about security, then they're not using it correctly and can create vulnerabilities like this. So someone has installed a new lock on their door to their patio, but they weren't thinking about their security that hard, and it's a sliding door. And so it's, again, because people aren't thinking in a security mind space that these kinds of vulnerabilities, sometimes less obvious than this, can come up and can be exploited to gain access into a space. So here's the really quick agenda of what I'm going to go through. I'm not going to go through it step by step because we'll get into it. So let's get started with latch-targeted bypass. So latch-targeted bypass usually refers to either carding or shoving a door. Some people will also call it like credit carding a door or something like that. And basically the idea of this is that it targets the latch that holds the door closed. Could you rotate this actually, 180? Yeah, and then, like I mentioned, depending on how the latch is facing, you'll either be shoving or pulling the latch. Oh, all right. So there are a whole bunch of different kinds of tools that you can use. Here are some of the more common ones. Here are some of the more common ones. So you'll see little cards like this. Sometimes I'll cut gift cards into this kind of general shape. We have a few of those kinds of tools here. Got a little latch slip, a little poker, but Terry's going to do a live demo using this piece of metal I found on the ground because I think that's more interesting. Next slide. Cool, so before we get into that, I'll hand you this piece of metal. This is what's called a latch and a dead latch. So you see the little things that are circled in red here? That's what's referred to a dead latch, and it's used to prevent people from being able to use the exact exploit we're about to show you. So here's a quick video demonstrating how a dead latch, just give it a second to load in. There you go. demonstrating how it works. So you can push in the latch into the door normally, but when you push that dead latch into the door, it prevents you from pushing that latch in. So on most doors, the latch has this security feature existing, but because people aren't security minded when they are installing these doors, they install it incorrectly, and so the security mechanism fails because they're not thinking about it. Next slide, please. Nope. There we go. So you'll see here, these are what are called strike plates, and it is the part in the door frame that catches that latch. And they are designed so that a piece of metal will be blocking that dead latch and pushing it into the door. But because people are cheap sometimes on installation, it's easier and cheaper to buy 100 of just whatever generic one will fit the door instead of buying the ones that are supposed to fit for the latch to keep the place secure. They'll take those shortcuts and then create these security vulnerabilities. Sometimes you'll see that dead latch has fallen into the hole in the strike plate, or other times it's almost about to fall in and you're able to push the door such that it falls into that hole. This is a deadbolt, and this is different from a dead latch. And you'll usually see these with thumb turns on the other side, and they prevent you from being able to use the bypass technique we're about to show you, as well as the under the door tool. There are other tools that you can use to bypass these kinds of locks that you can see at our village. So instructions for use. So this is the live demo portion. If you guys want to switch to Terry Cam. AV, could we switch to the camera? Okay, we'll just do the demo here then. Perfect, there we go. Okay, Terry Cam, take it away.
Yeah, so basically, using this piece of metal with just a little short hook, I can turn it like a key and open the door. And what I'm basically just doing is attempting to get a hold of this plunger right here and push it in, and then pulling it out, and then repeating the motion till it opens.
Thank you, Terry. And so, yeah, that's our quick little demo. As you can see, using this method is about as fast as using a key. And so this is a type of method that's able to be used during penetration tests when there are other people around. I have had occasions where I've used this bypass method where someone just looked at me and went, "Where did you get the key for this door?" And I just, I pretend that I'm supposed to be there. Let's go back to the slides if we could. Thank you. Next. So if the latch is facing in the opposite direction, then you're using shoving or carding, as some people like to call it, and it's very similar to the previous method. You're getting that card in between the latch and the strike plate and then pulling that door open. So here's a better look at it up close. I'm using my Flamingo hotel room key card from DEF CON a few years back. But yeah, so again, it's that card getting between the latch and the hole in the door frame.
Cool. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about some handle-targeted bypass. So sometimes the dead latch is actually working properly, and you'll have to go through some other methods. So there are some bypass methods that target the handle of the door instead of the latch. So it mimics a person entering from the inside of the room while the person is actually on the outside. So I'm going to talk about the under the door tool. So all you need with this is some piece of wire. It needs to be a little bit sturdy, but at the same time flexible, and a piece of string. So what you'll do is you'll bend a piece of wire into that sort of an S shape. You can also bend it, the top, you can bend it into a kind of a reverse C shape as well. Next slide. And so, as mentioned before, this will work on all sorts of lever-like handles. Now, the easier ones are the top three. It'll be this Q lever style is a little bit harder, just because it'll be easier for the under the door tool to slip by, but it's definitely still possible. So yeah, for how to use it, what you'll be basically doing is you'll be shoving almost the whole tool, except for the bottom portion of the under the door tool. You'll be making it so that either the wire part or the string part is beneath the handle part, and then you'll use the string to pull open the door. So you can see an example over here. And the part on the left, I believe, is the what it looks like from the outside versus the right is what you'll be doing. Well, sorry, left is on the inside and right is on the outside. And you can see here all that I believe Ege is, or the perpetrator is doing is putting the whole handle, and all they need to do is pull.
Yeah, so if any of you guys are interested in trying this out for yourself, we have all sorts of demos available. All sorts of demos available at our village that you guys can check out and try your hand at yourself. I think this is my section. Yeah. Okay, so next I'm going to be talking about doorknobs. So this is a doorknob, obviously, and these are a lot more difficult to bypass than lever-actuated handles, but they are being slowly phased out of use, at least in facilities and work buildings and things like that, because of disability law and because they're very difficult to open in the case of a fire. If you have weak grip strength or something that affects your ability to open doors, a lever handle is much easier to open and get out of in a panic. But you may still encounter some of these in the wild. So this is our little tool, similar to the under the door tool. It is a fancy little piece of bent wire and some string. I also personally like putting a little bit of tape or some rubber tubing or something to improve the grip that it has on the doorknob. So this is kind of basically how the tool works. It's shaped so that it can kind of just barely fit between the door and the door frame. Like you can see here, and then it allows you to actuate the doorknob on the secure side of the facility, just like one would with an under the door tool. So like I mentioned before, this vulnerability is for doorknobs, and you'll be using your little tool, so you'll need enough room between the door and the door frame to actually fit it. And basically, this is the idea that you use the metal tool to get your string over the handle of the doorknob, and once it's on the stem of that doorknob, you're pulling that string back and forth until it slowly turns that doorknob and opens it. It's, again, a little bit more complicated than using a under the door tool for a lever handle, but it is possible. Oh no, there should be a video. Yeah, there we go. Here's a fun little demo video of me trying to open a doorknob using my tool. It is hard to see because the wire really blends in with the dark wood of the door, but you can see where I've added tape onto the string to increase the grippiness of that string. So I'm just gently and carefully maneuvering it over the doorknob. Oh, there it goes. And then once it's on the doorknob, I'm going to remove the metal portion of my tool and let the string sit on the stem of that doorknob. And then once it is there, I can pull both ends tight, and then I can use that piece of tape to kind of adhere, oh, there I am, to the stem of that door handle and rotate the knob. I should have put a little piece of tape on that knob, but basically I'm rotating it using that string and that tape.
So yeah, now I'm going to talk a little bit about some crash bars. So these are what are known as crash bars, different than push bars, but basically the concept is you push on the crash bar to open the door. So very similar to the previous two bypass methods, all you need is some string and some wire to actuate the crash bar as if you were coming from the inside to the outside to unlock the door. So, as mentioned before, all you need is a crash bar on the other side of the door, and to make sure that there's enough room for you to fit that wire and string through the crack in the door. So what you'll do is you'll insert the tool through the side of the door, rotate the tool, and then pull down on a string, which will actuate the crash bar. A little bit hard to explain. I believe there should be a demo or some pictures. Yeah, here's the demo. Over here.
Me again.
Yeah. You can see here, if there's enough space to fit the wire in, then all you really need is to hook it onto that crash bar and then pull using the string. And yeah, very similar in concept, as I mentioned before, to the previous two. And so now I'm going to talk about some push bars, which look like these. So push bars tend to be a little bit more difficult due to the fact that there's not as much to actually hook onto. So what you can do, again, all you need is a piece of string. And what you can do is for this method to be able to work, you need the push bar must be on either the walls beside it, or the actual door has to have like a bunch of holes through it. And all you need to do is feed the string through the above the push bar, and then grab it from below, and then pull it from both sides. So I believe there is...
Yeah, we don't have a demo for this one.
We don't have a demo.
Nope.
If you guys want, you guys can come up to me later on. I'll be at the village. We actually have a video of it being used in kind of a real-life pen testing situation. It was very cool. It was actually on a stairwell within the building. And again, so you feed it through the top from the bottom, pull really hard.
Yeah, so come see us after the presentation and after the one we have after this if you want to see the little demo video. Forgot to put it in. Whoopsies. So next we have pulling really hard. This is my section.
My favorite method.
Okay, so pulling really hard is a very long-standing tradition of physical hackers. There's a lot of doors that are a little springy, a little loose in the frame, and can actually just be pulled open without needing to use any other bypass method with a strong enough arm. So this is probably the easiest bypass method to pack for. You just need a strong pair of arms, and if I can do it, you can do it as well, as strong as I look. So yeah, it is surprising the number of doors that you can open this way. A lot of the time, you'll see multi-bank doors kind of like this one, where they'll have at least one door that can actually be pulled open with this method. But usually what we'll do is we'll kind of go around a building and just kind of lightly tug on a bunch of the doors and just see which ones seem looser and springier than others. This is particularly applicable to larger facilities that have a lot of doors. There's usually one or two that you're able to open in buildings with a couple of doors. So here are the instructions for use in case it is complicated or difficult for you. You pull the door hard, and if it doesn't open, you do it again until it does. Next is removing the hinges.
Yes. So.
Is this you? Okay.
Yes. So to remove the hinges, this is sometimes the easiest way to open the door. But there are a couple of things that will need to happen for you to be able to use this method. Specifically, the hinges need to be installed incorrectly, aka on the outside of the door. If it is installed this way, then all you need is a screwdriver to unscrew the door, and you can literally take the door off the hinges and go inside. So all you need is a screwdriver, and for the hinges of the doors to be exposed from the outside of the door. As I mentioned before, all you need to do is unscrew the hinges and. So oftentimes the doors will have the pins of the hinge exposed. So from this, the pins can be removed and the door can literally come off the frame. You can also use vice grips or a hammer sometimes to actually, sometimes depending on the hinge, you might need to hammer out the hinges. Feel free to skip. Yeah. And here's the demo.
It's me again. So I've pulled out that lower hinge pin, and I'm actually using it to help remove the upper hinge pin. And a couple of very light taps on my hammer, and I'm able to pull that top hinge pin out with my vice grips. And then I can take the door that is still locked and gently wiggle it a whole bunch, and I can actually pull the door away from the frame and get entrance into this building. No. Boop. Next, that's you.
So yeah, for padlocks, you can use padlock shims. So these can be bought online in plastic or metal versions, or you can make them yourselves. I believe you used to be able to do them with the plastic, the cans, and you used to be able to cut them. I'm not sure if you're able to do them anymore.
Yeah, I think you still can, yeah.
So yeah, the way that these work is basically you have the shackle up top, and the way that it works when you lock it is these two pieces over here. When you pull the shackle in, it prevents the when the shackle is locked, then it'll prevent the shackle from coming up. So with padlock shims, you just insert them into the sides of the padlock, and you'll basically be moving these two metal pieces out so that you're able to lift the shackle up.
Okay, that's me. So next up, I'm going to be talking about these button push combination locks. So there's a few different styles that you see, but basically it allows you access into a space without needing to have a whole bunch of copies of the physical key. For the example on the left, this one just uses a combination that allows you access into the space. On the right, there are lock boxes that you can put a singular set of keys into and then give someone the combination so that they can use the keys and then put them back when they're done. So you might have seen something like this before. This is very common, at least in North America. And where this was taken was actually outside of a little walkway with a whole bunch of little stores and shops. And so the purpose of these boxes is they can give their employees that are opening up the store in the morning the combination, and then they can push it into the buttons, get the key out of the box, and then unlock the door and then put them back when they're done. And this means they don't have to make a copy of the key for every single person that's on opening shift throughout the week. This is another example. So this is actually outside of a condo in Toronto. And what this is actually is for Airbnbs. So a lot of people will put their keys or their apartment key tags or anything of that sort into these kinds of boxes and then tell the Airbnb guest the combination. And then you don't actually have to be there when your guest arrives to give them the keys and allow them access into the space. So the thing about these boxes, though, is they are often unshielded. And so if you are putting a key tag or a key fob into these boxes, you can use something like a Proxmark or a Flipper 0 to copy that tag without needing to open the box at all, and then use that copy to get into whatever space you're trying to get into. Another option is that you can use UV ink or UV powder. And they can be applied to the buttons to figure out which buttons are being used by the users of the space to access the space. Using your UV light and a little bit of patience, you can actually reduce the possible number of combinations from something that would take weeks and weeks to guess to something that you can guess in a few minutes. So basically how it works is you want to take your UV ink pen and mark all of the buttons, and then you go home. You let the legitimate users of the space enter the combination a couple times, and every time they do that, it'll be wiping ink off of those buttons. When you come back, enough ink will be removed from those buttons that you can guess which numbers are involved in the combination, and then that allows you to brute force or guess until you get the combination in the correct order. In addition to that, pigment can transfer from one button to the other when someone's unlocking the door. So sometimes you can put some ink on one if you know that that's one of the buttons being used. And then if you see a little bit of ink transfer on 4 after that, you know that the number 4 comes after 1 in the combination. Sometimes you don't even need to use UV ink to figure out what the combination is. Sometimes you can just guess. Further to that, these kinds of locks here are made by Simplex. These are Simplex locks, and when they are manufactured in the factory, they set the default code to 2 and 4 at the same time, and then 3. A lot of the times, people will not bother to change the combination, and so you can actually go around and try that combination on a lot of Simplex locks, and you would be surprised by the number of times that it works. Also, sometimes people will just write the combination on the window for you. I don't know what the point in having a lock is, but sometimes you make choices. Next is Enterphones. I think that's still me. Yeah, so these are Enterphones. You'll see them commonly to let people into condos, apartment buildings, office high-rises, things like that. And pretty much they allow the visitor to contact someone that lives in the building who can then push a button and it remotely unlocks the door to let them in so that the person that is living there does not need to go downstairs to get someone every single time. So the master code is used to configure the Enterphone. So this lets you add residents and add entry codes and things like that. And a lot of the times you can go online and find what the default is when they come from the factory. A lot of the time people are lazy or don't know how to change the combination, and so they just leave it as the default, and then you can go around with your little list of default keys and just see which ones will allow you access. Further to that, if you've ever seen one of these little Enterphone boxes before, you might notice a little hole with a little lock in it, and pretty much there's a few major manufacturers, at least in North America, of these Enterphones. DoorKing, DoorGuard, Linear, and Miracom are kind of the big 4 ones. And these Enterphones are pretty much always key-to-like. So all of the Enterphones made by, for example, Miracom can all be opened with 1 key. DoorKing is kind of a new exception to that because they found out everyone was going out and buying the 1 key that opened all their Enterphones. So they made 3 more so that it's harder to guess which one. So everyone went out and bought 3 more keys, and now they have the same problem. And so you might be wondering, why do I care if someone can get access into my Enterphone? And the reasoning is because it lets you get at the circuitry. And once you're able to get into the circuitry, you can start jumpering things and shorting mechanisms and getting things to buzz you in when it shouldn't be. So here's a really fun real-life example from a pen test I've been on. And so there's no sound here, but we are using the key to get access to the Enterphone, and then using some alligator clips to jumper the connection that allows people to buzz into the door. You can't hear it on this video, but it does a very satisfying buzz sound as it lets you in. And so it does the buzz, buzz, and allows you to open the door and gain access into that building. Next is wheelchair buttons. So these are wheelchair buttons. They're a great accessibility tool that allows the door to open automatically when it's pushed. On occasion, you'll see that the button is installed such that if you press the button, it'll unlock and open the door, even if the door is supposed to be locked otherwise. So here's a really fun video from a site visit where they had done something like this with the elevator button, with the wheelchair accessibility button. So that door is locked, and you push it, and it actually unlocks and opens itself for you, and even holds the door open for you. Next is elevators.
So yeah, elevators are everywhere in modern buildings. So there'll be places, entire sections of the building that are locked out, requiring a key card or fob to get in. So there are lots of different ways to bypass these elevators. So to start off with, we'll talk a little bit of some alarms. So a lot of these electronics run off signals representing 0 or 1. So in cheaper alarm systems without mechanisms, you can very easily, to detect tampering, you can often trick the circuits very easily to think the door is not open. So you can disconnect the panel, then identify the state, and either disconnect the circuit by cutting it or whatnot, or you can short the mechanisms. So I'll talk a little bit about contact sensors. So contact sensors use magnets to detect whether or not a door is open or closed. So these contact sensors will be embedded in the door. So there'll be a magnet in the door and a sensor in the door frame. So when the door is closed, then the sensor will detect that there's a magnet connected to it, and when it's open, it'll detect that the magnet will be gone. So what you can do is you can use a magnetic probe, you can use a compass, which is sensitive to these magnetic fields to detect if a sensor exists, if a contact sensor exists. And then once you've determined where the contact sensors are, then you can use a magnet, insert it into the door frame, perform whatever other bypass you'd like to get the actual door open, and that'll prevent the alarm from going off.
So if you guys are interested in learning more about these kind of alarm basics and how to bypass them, we do have these demonstrations for display in our village, so come by and you can try it out yourself.
So there are also PR sensors or request to exit sensors. So these sensors are often implemented for convenience. So for if you're coming from the inside of a secure space, then sometimes it will it'll either unlock the door or open it automatically in some cases. Oftentimes either you'll need to tap a fob or they'll need to, these requests to exit sensors will need to be activated for alarm to not go off. So if you can trick the sensor into thinking that there's someone coming in from the secure space, then you can, oftentimes it'll unlock the door itself. So how you can do this is by using a compressed canister of air. So you can get this at your local hardware store or electronics store that are used to, so these are used to clean your computer oftentimes. And yeah, so what you'll be doing is, at the top, these are often found at the top of the door frame. So what you'll often do is use this canister of compressed gas and spray it at the top, and it'll think that someone is coming through.
Yeah, and so further to that, we also do have a PIR or passive infrared sensor display at our village as well, although this one is the opposite. So what Terry was talking about is a request to exit where it will unlock for someone that's trying to exit the building, whereas the one that we have set up is almost like a motion sensor kind of thing, where if motion is sensed, then it sets off an alarm. So you guys can try to bypass that and figure out a bit more about how those work. Next, I'm going to be talking about unlocked or improperly locked doors. So you might be thinking, yeah, of course, if the door is unlocked, then of course I can get through it. Why does this matter? Well, you would be surprised at the number of doors that are actually just left unlocked or propped open. And there's a lot of times where in a bigger facility especially, you can just walk around from door to door and just kind of gently see which doors are unlocked, and you'll usually find one or two. In particular, you can find signs like this that tell you that a door might be open. So there's a lot of different reasons why a door wouldn't be locked. There's some examples such as human error. So if a staff member propped it open and didn't unprop it, if you came to the building during open hours and then you were planning to infiltrate it later at night and you propped it and you came back later, clutter, things like that, or a lot of the time closing staff will forget to lock doors, especially in that bigger facility. There's also a lot of environmental differences. So air pressure differences or warped door frame. So in the summer when it's very, very hot, the wood of the door does expand a little bit and you'll find that doors are a little bit harder to close. And then that can prevent a door from closing behind you properly. And then of course, if the lock is broken, if parts of the door are not working properly, et cetera, those are all reasons why a door wouldn't be locked when you would expect it to be. So this is a really great example of something that I look out for during my physical pen testing engagements. Signs like this that say, keep this door closed, usually means that this facility and this door is having a problem with people propping it or people not closing it properly. So usually this would be a kind of door that I would visit a few times over a few days, and chances are good, at least one of those nights, it would be propped open, left open, or not closed properly. This is another example. This door got a little rock in there between the two doors that are supposed to close. And so this is a door that people expect to normally lock behind them, but because a little bit of rubble got in there, it doesn't actually close, even though they think it would, and normally they would just walk away without double checking that that door is closed behind them. Here's another example. So these have the locks removed, and if you just try the handle, the door will feel very locked. You won't be able to just pull this door open. But the thing is, the mechanism is still inside this, just without the lock itself. So what I can do is I can take a screwdriver and I can put it in there and I can actually pull that little mechanism that'll unlock the door and not even require a key because there is no lock. Is this you? Okay.
Yeah, and just another fun thing that you can do, if there is no, keep door closed, something that sometimes works is just bringing a sign of your own that says, please keep door open, or something like that. And sometimes it works.
Yeah, especially if it's the type of site that like prints signs off of office paper in Times New Roman font size 40, and you can see that it's very consistent, then you can make ones that look exactly like the ones that they print out from the front office without actually needing to do very much work. Okay, and this is the last little section. It's ceilings, windows, and going around. So sometimes you'll find that the easiest way to get through a door is to not go through the door at all. And again, this happens because people aren't extremely security minded. So here's a really fun example. So this is a ladder, and this ladder has a little cage over it that protects the ladder, but also prevents you from being able to climb it if this little thing is locked. So you can see the little lock on the side, and usually if that ladder is available for use, that'll be swung open, and you can actually get through that little gap at the bottom. But right now it's locked, and oh no, what am I gonna do? Well, actually, this ladder is far enough away from the building that there is a perfectly fine working ladder between the ladder and the building, and I can climb up behind the ladder instead of using the front of the ladder and get up to the roof where there might be easier access or hatches or doors that I could get in through. Here's another example of getting around it. So you can see a very strong fence here, and the tree has kind of grown around it and kind of swallowed up this fence. And so because of that, it creates a very nice foothold for me to just climb up and over the fence without needing to do too much work. Here's another example. So this was a site visit where there was a vent that just went from the outside right into the building. And so usually there's the little panels that cover up that vent, but they're very easy to remove because they're not meant to be a security thing. It's just meant to let air in and out. And you can remove that quite easily and climb in through the false ceiling and get into what should be a secure building. Here's another fun example. So this is a really, really big vent, a big hole that goes right over a door that should be locked. And so even if this door is locked, with a screwdriver or a little bit of prying, you're able to get up into this very larger than person-sized hole above the door and get into this space. Here's another example of going through a false ceiling. So you can climb up a ladder, either one that's there already or one that you bring and place there. And the thing about these false ceilings is often the wall does not connect all the way up through it, and so you can actually go into the space, the crawl space above the ceiling of these spaces, and go from a unsecure area into a secure area just by removing the panel and hopping down. So there's my coworker there about to come down from the ceiling. And there he goes. Down he goes. So now he's gone over a wall past what should be a locked door into what is a secure space. So that's another thing we definitely check for during our pen tests. Obviously, if you're doing this kind of thing, you want to be very careful. So this doesn't have audio, but I will narrate it for you in a very fun way. So this is a news report about a robber that climbed onto the roof of this pharmacy in an attempt to gain access into that space. But because this criminal was not particularly well-versed in these kinds of techniques, he was able to figure out he could get in through the ceiling, but he did not watch his step and actually came crashing down into this space. And so, you want to be very, very careful when you're going into a ceiling space, a false ceiling, because they're not really meant for people to be walking around normally if you don't know what you're doing. And so, these two photos are from residential spaces, but the same rule applies. Your foot can very easily go through a false ceiling. So in a lot of these pen testing applications, it's more of something that I mention and point out rather than actually go up there to prove that I can. Rather, it's easier just to say, this is a vulnerability, you should fix it without needing to demonstrate. So that takes us to the end of this presentation. We have about 20 minutes for Q&A and questions or chatting or anything of that sort. So if anybody has questions, we're having our lovely hotfixer walk around with a microphone. Just put your hand kind of way up if you have questions, and we're happy to answer them. If you could go around with the microphone. Thank you. Any questions? Hands way up. Okay, cool. So no questions. If you guys think of any questions after this, you can hit us up on all of our socials. So there's my contact info, there's Terry's contact info, and then the Village's contact info as a whole. If you want to try some of those hands-on demos for yourself, we are in Sala B. So come by, try out the exploits, and then in about 20 minutes, Terry and I will be giving another presentation following this one up, going over how to remediate and prevent people from using the bypasses we just talked about. So thank you guys all for coming, and feel free to hang around, ask us questions one-on-one if you would like, or I will see you guys in 20 minutes when we give our next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.